All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Semo?
Well, we've got a few things. You said you wanted to talk about anxiety, which without a whole lot of details, so I'll have to play off you on that one. We might be able to tie it into some stuff I'm working on for school, which is kind of our age group and how it's fitting into Western society. And, if we have a little time, we can talk a little football. We need to make preseason predictions.
Yeah. Ugh. I don't feel good about that.
Oh, that's because you're a
Um,
Cowboys fan.
yeah, yeah. It's only because I have 25 years of experience of being disappointed, but whatever. Um, right. So I had a thought, and we didn't get to it the other day when I had a bunch of potpourri thoughts because we spent most of our time spended. Oh yeah, that's good talking. We spent most of our time talking about the debate and Trumpianism and nonsense I don't like, but I thought there was a lot to say about it. All right, so I had this thought, um, and it was sparked when my son was talking to my daughter and said something to the effect of thing you need to remember about anxiety, social anxiety, is that the anxiety comes because you think people are looking at you. They're not. Nobody cares about you, which is true. Um,
Yeah, but as this is actually from yesterday's class, uh, reflective what was it, reflective conditioning. And if something happened at a certain time that was semi-traumatic, and the crowd looking your way at that given time would cause a secondary reflexive reaction. So it's really difficult because we don't want to get too Freudian and say, oh, your childhood determines everything. But if there was something that crowd triggers reaction because crowd was there and was the most prominent thing in reaction, it's like someone who's bitten by a dog, and now they're afraid of dogs. All dogs didn't do that, just like all crowds didn't cause the reaction, but whatever started that. And it could be multiple occasions.
and I mean we've kind of made this point before, but there is an element to, well, it's all in your head. Okay, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not real
Well,
to
everything's all
you.
in our head.
Exactly. So, well, I think everyone's looking at me because they all looked at me when I tried to sit down and I fell out of my chair. Okay, yeah, they all looked at you and then they moved on with their lives. Okay, but so it is all in your head, but that doesn't mean it's not real. That doesn't mean there wasn't something that triggered it. Where I think I've said this before, the the best layperson's definition of anxiety and depression that I've heard actually came from one of the sports radio guys I listen to, who's talked a lot about mental health and his difficulties with
Well,
it.
let me say my definition. You say if it was the same
Okay.
before I hear yours. Putting the worst possible outcome on an unknown future.
No, this was much more layperson than that. Basically, what he said is, look, it's normal to have anxiety. Okay, you're going to a job interview or you're going to meet new people. It's normal to have social anxiety. What are you anxious about? Or are you just anxious? It's normal to be sad. It's normal to be lowercase d colloquial depressed. Your grandma died. Yeah, you're going to be sad. You're going to be depressed. Or are you just depressed? Are you are you depressed about something or are you just depressed? And I thought, you know what? That is a great layperson's definition of trying to figure out, do I have depression or am I just depressed? Do I have anxiety or am I just anxious?
Well, let me tie it to another disorder, so to speak, that it might drive the point home more because people don't want to talk about anxiety and depression so much because it's sensitive because so many people are being affected by it in Western society, right? What about phobias, right?
Mm,
So a phobia is different than a fear of something. A fear of a snake is a healthy thing.
hmm
because a fear of a snake is going to cause you to be careful around it. And even if you handle them and you're one of those people that can do that kind of thing, you're still going to treat it like it could hurt you, right? You watch the old Steve Irwin things. He didn't like just willy-nilly just grab it by the middle of it and pick it up. He picked it up by the tail, knowing exactly how far it could go, and then he would work its way till he was behind its head. That's a healthy fear. That might be the extreme end of a super
Yeah.
healthy fear, but just the fact that I see a snake, you know what? I'm not going to walk on that part of the path. There's high grass around and I saw a snake earlier. Maybe I'm not going to just tromp through the high grass willy-nilly. Those are healthy fears. But if you get to a point where you don't react in a healthy way, it becomes a phobia. I see a snake, I faint. If
Mm.
there's something dangerous next to me, fainting is not the best course of
Nope.
action, right? I see a buffalo, I faint, and the buffalo launches me 10 feet through the air, right?
I saw Jaws way too young, and we were living in Hawaii. I was afraid to get in the pool for a while.
That's secondary
Okay.
conditioning, by the way.
Yeah.
You're
So I
afraid
got
of
over it.
shark bite, but you become afraid of pool because
Hmm.
shark bite happens.
Now I got over it because I was a kid and I loved the water and I wanted to get back in the water. But that is the kind of thing you're talking about, is that can fester and then become something really bad.
Mm-hmm. And then you need kind of a behavioral therapy to address the situation,
Hmm.
which crowds is a hard one because all of us have a little bit of an innate fear of public speaking because we're a social animal. We have an
Good
innate
point.
fear of not presenting ourselves well to other portions of our social group. And you've got a lot of them at once when you're public speaking. So social anxiety, it can be healthy because it could cause you to prepare better. That would be a healthy response, right? I have to give a speech for class. I'm really anxious about it. Let me practice this thing 10 times so that it's reflexive when I get up there. That would be a healthy response. But I'm so scared of it. I'm paralyzed in preparation. And then I get up there and I want to faint. That's anxiety. There's the big difference. Depression. This thing made me sad. My dog died. My dog died and I couldn't function for 3 weeks. That helped not myself or anybody else. It was very maladaptive. So when these things go to a maladaptive state, or depression, the best thing you could do for yourself is get up and do something when you're depressed. But depression causes you to lay in bed and not be motivated to do anything. Whereas I'm just sad. Maybe if I go for a walk, I'll feel better. It didn't help all the way, but it helped a little.
Mhm.
That's a healthy response. That's
That
not depression. That's just being a little bit depressed.
let me make it personal here and give an example from my own life. And this is one of those, look back in frustration and kick myself, because this was 20 something years ago, because it was like 1999, 2000. And this was a big indicator. This should have been a big indicator that something is wrong and this isn't something you fix on your own. You should get some help with this. And I didn't. Instead, I did what I'd kind of conditioned slash been trained to do, which is self-flagellate, rub some dirt, rub some mental dirt in it and walk it off. Well, okay, but you can't. I mean, sometimes you can, to your point. Like, I'm sad, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna go for a walk, get some fresh air, get out of my head, make myself feel a little better. That can work. But then there are times of, no, your bone is sticking out through your leg, you're not going to walk it off. You need some help there, you know. Um so our sophomore year, I think, was
Yeah, but not getting up and going to the doctor would be the extreme point of that. My bone is sticking out.
exactly.
Well, that's never going to get better until you have that put in place and pinned.
Exactly. So uh the spring semester, the January of our sophomore year, I got, and this ties into what you were talking about, which was, there's a triggering incident. So yeah, it was all in my head, but it's not like it was wholly irrational. Uh like a couple weeks into the semester, I got really sick. I don't know if you remember, like pneumonia and bronchitis. So I was pretty much in bed for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Missed a lot of class. I couldn't make myself go back to class because it felt too awkward. And where it became a negative feedback loop is because I knew intellectually, no, no one cares. They're busy with their own lives. They're trying to make their own grades. They're busy worrying about if they're going to get laid or not. You know, it's college life. Nobody cares. Just get up and go to class. I couldn't make myself do it because it felt too awkward and I felt like everyone's going to be looking at me. But intellectually, I knew they wouldn't. So it just created this self-hating negative feedback loop where I ended up, it was the first time I'd had to drop a class. There were a couple of classes I had to drop. And then others I didn't do so well in. You know, I got that is when I ended up being out of the honors program because of my GPA was after that because I missed so much class.
Which is the first time I've beat you in our lives academically. I was knocked out of the honors program before you.
I'll drink to that.
Sorry.
So that should have been a clue. Back to our physical analogy. That should have been a clue. Hey, the bone's sticking out. You can't fix that on your own, but you're just going to sit down and do nothing about it. Oh, okay, that's now you got something really wrong with you. You need help with that. But I was not in a position intellectually, emotionally, whatever, to do anything about it, to realize what I should have done about it and then do it. And it derailed, I mean, it basically derailed my whole life because I didn't get help.
Mm-hmm.
It basically derailed my entire professional life. Because that was when I dropped out of the ROTC program. That is when I gave up on the hard sciences and went into the humanities, which had no real career path forward, but it was something I could do more easily than being in all of these, you know, on top of all that was wrong, because I was trying to figure out exactly what I want to major in. That semester was almost all hard sciences, and they weren't easy classes. That was chemistry and physics and honors calc 2, and I think that may have been the semester I tried to take programming as well, and I sucked at it. So that should have been an indication of, hey, you need to get up, go to the doctor and get this bone set. And instead it was, I'm going to sit down in the mud here and then try and figure out how to live without being able to walk.
Yeah. And downstream of that being someone who's been trying to help you with this post hoc, not because I mean, we kind of drifted apart during that time a little bit too. So there's another effect. It affected our friendship to some degree. And I kind of drifted in one direction, then you drifted the other, and we kind of came back together. Whereas, you know, once things kind of clicked for me after that first really bad 2 semesters at school, which were actually just having the first comfort of my life was the worst part for me because I didn't know how to deal with it. And you were the opposite. You had the first real adversity of your life in that moment. And we would have been a great team at that point. But at the same time, we had drifted apart and neither of us helped each other. And now we're kind of post hoc trying to come back into it. And so all of these things, what I was getting at is you also developed your bad motor patterns that are haunting you to this day. As we've talked about, we've talked about a couple episodes ago, where you know, we'll give a kind of a vague example. This is part of yours, but it's not. I'm going to give more of the comic book guy version of this. The sit in the basement playing video games all day, and they walk around with a hunchback like this because they've been in this position for so long that it's actually a structural thing. Well, you started more motor patterns based around feeling like you can't do things physically. And the longer you do that, it's the opposite of training. It's detraining. So you develop, your body restructures to be a bum. And then when you try to correct that, it's a long, painful process. And depending on how much damage was already done, you know, how much closer to genetic potential can we get? You're never going to get to full genetic potential because you already had a big setback in your life. but how close can we get without hurting ourselves? And so the psychological state, the physical state, the social state, all of these things played into each other to keep exacerbating the situation.
All right, so I want to move on a little bit here from so basically I'm laying the foundation. We're laying the foundation here of anxiety and depression in general. And then
Well,
me as a
and then
specific
to add to
example.
that, as we talked just talked about here, it being a snowball effect.
Right. So I had this was kind of my epiphany because my kids were talking, and so I was thinking about it in the context of their generation is our generation wasn't great when it came to narcissism and self-absorption, but subsequent generations are even worse. And so I kind of had this thought of, wait, maybe that's part of the problem with the ballooning of um, anxiety and depression amongst teenagers and younger people is that, yeah, the kind of cure for social anxiety is to realize that it's not all about you. Not everyone is looking at you. You're afraid to go into a crowd because you think as soon as you walk in the room, not only is everyone going to look at you, but everyone's going to look at you and judge you negatively. And that's not the case, but is that part of the problem with youngsters because they want everyone to be looking at them? You add that, you compound that with social media, which is just everyone's fake life. And oh, everybody's having more fun than me. Everyone's going on more vacations than me. Everyone's having more sex than me. Everyone's prettier than me. That's not real, but it's reinforcing the negative feedback loop in your own mind. So you can't get out of this anxiety and depression because you want everyone to be looking at you.
Gosh, this could go in so many different ways because the answer is yes. We'll start with the narcissism. One of the inherent traits of that is an insecurity based on what you think other people feel about you, and you need constant external reinforcement. But one of the other traits of it is it's never enough.
Mm.
It's always fleeting. You get that little bit of self-affirmation and you feel good about yourself for a second, but then that stops working. You get a creep effect, and then you need more, and then you need more, and then you need more. And the first time someone says, dude, you're kind of a jerk, it crashes down, and
Mm.
you start from square one, or you just spiral. So there's that. Then we got social emotional learning, which, yeah, they teach about thinking about other people's feelings, but also they spend a lot of time talking about or teaching how other people make you feel. And what's the worst thing a young boy especially can do is sit there and dwell on their own feelings. It's kind of, you get up and you do the thing and you let the constant successes reinforce you versus what other people say. So now we've got a kind of a feeding the beast, right? The narcissism is never enough. You care too much about how you feel inside. And it's not about, we just need to talk about our feelings. That doesn't do anything, especially for a guy. We can't shout affirmations into Hormozy, the guy who used to own Gymshark way back. Shouting affirmations in the mirror, no one ever got better by doing that.
Gosh darn it, people like me.
Yeah, they got better. Oh, I was thinking that exact same phrase in my head the other day, but they got better by stacking together successes so you can't even be your own worst critic, because you can say, oh, I'm a loser, and then you look at your stack of successes and you go, well, now you have the different type of self-doubt. Am I really the loser I thought I was? I built a business. I built my physical fitness. I have a good kid. I have a great wife. I have a nice house. Am I really that much of a loser? So that's kind of it actually reverses the self-talk. And that's why the affirmations in the mirror, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. Well, what if you haven't done anything good in a long time? You do a lot of dumb things and nobody ever invites you over. You could say that in the mirror all you want, but if you've got that as your record, you're going to always have this internal doubt.
At some point, reality is going to butt its ugly head into this, illusion that you have created. That That is where things like cognitive therapy, come in, is it's not just let's talk about our feelings. It's okay. And I've mentioned this with Peterson's book, is what immediately attracted me to it, and why I thought this is something different, is because so much of the self-help industry is really just platitudes. And I've used the example before because it's so simple, of Peterson's point of make your bed in the morning. And it's not, making your bed for making your bed's sake. Is here is a simple technique you can use to start the day with some order,
Yeah, and
to start the day with some accomplishment.
that could be anything. He uses make your bed, and
Yeah,
he's really big on that. A lot of military people are really big on that. Was the General Mathis or whatever that gives the speech on that?
I think so.
Yeah, but it could be going for a walk first thing in the morning, getting up 30 minutes early to go for a walk.
Mm,
It could be the ice plunge, the first thing in the morning, doing the ice plunge, doing something that is either inconvenient or not pleasant as the first thing you do, but is good for you.
mhm.
So making your bed creates order in your room. That helps you mentally. Getting in the ice plunge has downstream physical effects. You kind of lower your cortisol levels right at the beginning by spiking them. You spike them and then they dissipate. Your blood sugar goes down a little bit. All of the positive effects there. You get a dopamine rush after that. Going for the walk has a similar effect. It just takes longer than the ice plunge. Doing a workout program first thing in the morning, doing the Jocko Willink at 4:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
All of these things, just something in the morning that is good for you, but takes work.
It also, I wasn't quite thinking in these lines, but you said a couple things previously that kind of dawned on me. Is I don't know that we've talked about it in this vein of, this is also why Peterson is so popular with young men. As we talked about in our last Wheel of Time episode, when we were talking about men and women, men are doers. We want to do things. That's one of the first things you have to figure out in a serious relationship, in marriage, is, all right, and I've heard, I can't remember who I heard first say this, that I've heard people say that the kind of the key to their happy marriage was when their wife first started talking, if they were ranting about something, they would interrupt and say, okay, honey, is this a you need to vent conversation, or this is a you need me to fix it conversation?
I
Because
told you that one.
you told me that. Okay. I was trying to
But
remember.
I got it from other people, all pieced together. But I think I had you listen to David Lane. He was on Modern Wisdom one time, and it was something I had told you a long time ago, but he was
Mhm.
talking about the same thing. That
Okay. I was trying to remember where I got that from, and that is a big effing deal.
Oh,
Um,
I know where I got it from. The boy crisis. What's his
mm,
name? Uh the book's right behind me. I'm blanking on the name,
but
but
wh-
yeah.
when
The
when people complain about feminized how our education system is designed by and by women for girls, this is kind of what they're talking about, is that guys want to do things. To your point of the affirmations, it's not just the affirmation. It's, hey, remind yourself that. It's not, gosh darn it, people like me. It's, hey, you know, uh remember remember last time when when you were together and everyone, the highlight of the evening was you telling your story about X, and everyone thought that was hilarious and they loved it. Okay, it's a thing. There is a thing tied to the affirmation. It's not just that, gosh darn it, you're special. It's that, hey, you aced that test that a lot of other people had problems with. There is a tangible thing attached to it. And that's what Peterson is kind of unlocking for a lot of boys, young men who have never really had this before, of, hey, here is a thing you can do and you can check a box and say, ha, I did it.
This is something that's been studied. If you The way they did the study, they took a bunch of kids, took a test, various scores, but the ones that did really well, they either told them, you're so smart or you worked really hard on that.
Hmm.
And then they retested them. And the ones that they said, you're so smart, did worse. And the ones that they said, you worked really hard on that, did better. It was attached to the effort. It was attached to what they did. It wasn't just a platitude or an affirmation. You're so smart. Well, now I have the expectation to be smart. But if it was attached to the effort, well, if I give the same effort, I should get the same result, right?
The stereotypical Asian tiger mom is viewed by a lot of people as bad. That's a problem, okay? Because you're being cruel to your children. My wife has talked about how her parents never called her pretty. You don't tell that to your children, especially young girls. Uh they never told her you're so smart. And and from the kind of Western soft chubby perspective, oh man, that's so mean. It's why she's a hard worker. I've said, I think we've both said before, way back when we kind of first started this, is we hoped our kids were B students. We were A students in high school, and that was a problem, especially me, because I never had to work for it. I was an A student just by waking up in the morning. I, you know, and I was fine with that. Eh, had I applied myself, sure, maybe I could have been an A plus student. Okay, but I didn't care. I was like, that's an A. What do I care, right? And so when I became a parent, I thought, boy, I hope my kids are B students so they have to work, because that's what really matters. Um, oh crap, I'm gonna butcher it, which is unfortunate because he's one of the most brilliant minds of the last century. Of uh, Thomas Sowell has talked about this in the context um of deserve, of what you deserve. Um, and he's even gone even farther than, it's not even about earn. It's about what you've accomplished, what you've demonstrated. Okay. Um, Ben Carson didn't become the most renowned neurosurgeon in the country because he had a good backstory, because he came from the projects of Philadelphia. This young black kid who used to have anger issues and wasn't a very good student, and then he worked his way in. No, it's because he demonstrated that he was the best neurosurgeon. He had these incredible successes of separating conjoined twins. He demonstrated, he accomplished. That's what matters. Meritocracy, that's what he was talking about. I'm trying to remember when I heard this, but he was using it in the context of someone asked him about, use the term meritocracy. And you know, he shot that down of, what, no, we're not, or we weren't a meritocracy, because merit has nothing to do with it. It's uh the it's what you've accomplished, it's what you've demonstrated. When you look at like the stories we used to tell ourselves. I was texting you this weekend because I've been watching the Exodus series on Jordan Peterson's channel, and there's a lot of deep stuff there. And this is something Peterson's been on for a while, and was kind of the point of his Genesis series, and he's talked about it here in this Exodus series. Is stories are important because this is what creates um the foundation in your mind as a child, and it teaches you lessons that you don't understand yet because you're too young and or inexperienced to understand it. It's why we have the legends of, George Washington chopping down the cherry tree and I cannot tell a lie. It's it's why Benjamin Franklin was held up as this ideal, because of the things he accomplished. Thomas Jefferson, trying to remember, I think he wrote the Declaration of Independence when he was like 30. He was ridiculously young.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We didn't just tell these stories about our founding fathers to fetishize the founding of our nation. It was because we were trying to impress upon young minds, these are the values you should emulate in your life. These are why stories matter, because you need to understand these values and emulate them before you can even really articulate them. And I don't know how I got here. I seem to have
Yeah,
gone off on a tangent.
I think we went off the road there. But you had started with having an easy time getting A's in school was a setback.
Mhm.
And for me, that was definitely true in two cent. So, like I said, it was the first time I was ever comfortable when we went to college, as far as from a living standpoint, from a food standpoint. And I gained a lot of weight that semester. Everybody talks about the freshman 15. I gained the freshman 80. And that's not a lie. That's exactly how much it was. The freshman 81, actually. And uh yeah, I overslept a lot and I got bad grades and ended up out of the honors, and then decided to drop out for a minute to recollect myself there. And that wasn't what helped me the most. This is one reason I'm into physical fitness, because when I wasn't calorie starved, once I got to school, I blew up. And there's a reason I'm the only not overweight person in my family. Oh, we've got genetic testing for this. Predisposed to higher BMI. So when it
Hmm.
comes to physical fitness, I've got to work for this. Unlike grades, I've got to work for this big time. Long-term weight control, another marker. If that will greater difficulty in maintaining weight. Not only did I have to work for it to lose all the weight again, I have to work my ass off just to maintain it. And that's not just age, it's been that way ever since then.
Hmm.
And that humbled me, and that taught me how to work hard. So then when I went back to school, I was a 4-point student, because I learned how to do things as a process and not as a given. I would have gone back to school and been successful had I not gone through the first process of losing the weight, getting more fit, starting to learn. Well, that's when I got into MMA, and then I was humbled again because used to you get in fights all the time when we were younger, and I had an older brother,
Mhm.
wrestled around and everything, but yet people half my size were kicking my ass. So I had to start from ground zero and work my way up. So physical fitness and the benefits I got from being humbled and then learning to process that is the reason why I'm successful in school now, and graduated with 1 A- in undergrad and 1 B in grad school. And we'll see how this next jaunt into it goes. But it was that learning to to build those successes, to go for the carrot at the end of the stick, because but trust in the process to get there. And once you get to the carrot, you say, oh, all those things I did, if I keep doing those, that's more carrots. I stole that one too from Harmozy. He said cookies.
I can't remember if I've used this example before, but the kind of one of the points where I was, and I've told him this, though I was most proud of my son, is when he didn't make the team his freshman year. And that's a big deal. And I, it kind of made me look back and think, I wish I would have, as much as I've complained and I hate the whole travel team thing, there's a part of me that wishes I would have started that a little sooner, because wanting to be able to do something and then not being good enough, that's going to challenge you and show you what it's going to take to actually work. And for the most part, when we were growing up, we were already at the everybody gets a trophy stage, and the if you want to be on the team, you're on the team. You may not play, but you're on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because of the uh, physical constraints of swimming, it's uh, it's more difficult to make the team. So if he had wanted to do, football in the fall and winter instead of swimming, he would have been on the team. Now he didn't play football when he was younger, so he might not have just been standing around on the sidelines, but he would have made the team. Because of the physical constraints, they had to have tryouts because there were more people that wanted to be on the swim team than could physically be on the swim team. He didn't make it. So The rest of that year, he continued to go to a non-school private thing, and we saw, all right, well, if you're serious about this, we'll keep paying for this, swim club. And then he would wake up every morning at 5:30, 6 o'clock before he had to go to school and work out so that he could get stronger and fitter and leaner and have a better chance of making the swim team the next year. That was very good for him. That was a challenge that he had to overcome, and then he did. And it helped that he could have something to check off. So we talk about bell curves and tendencies and things like that. And here's a good example of that. Of my wife is very feminine. She is not very masculine at all. But there are times where that kind of more masculine idea helps. So she hates working out. She was never athletic. She was never interested in sports or athletics. She was a mathlete, not an athlete. So when I have her and my daughter exercise, they don't like it. All right. Well, something that helps is to actually write it out. And as silly as it sounds, she likes it when I put a little check mark there because she did something. All right, here's the first circuit we're going to do.
Mhm.
Here are the sets, here are the reps, here are the exercises. And she'll get annoyed at me if I don't put a check mark there. She wants to see that check mark. Well, I mean, on the surface, that's kind of silly, but it makes sense. There's a reason that is the case. It helps. It's all right. Here, for my son, it's all right, fine. I'll write you the workout. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. with you to make sure you're doing it right. And it wasn't a check mark. It was a here, record your weights. Here's the weight I did for these exercises. Boom. Or sometimes with like a finisher, I'll have a set range because I want you to finish. I want you to burn out whatever you have left. So I usually have a finisher at like 2 to 4 sets of this circuit. So write down how many sets you did. Okay, of that finisher. So there was something he could record and see, I have accomplished this thing. Huzzah.
Huzzah. All right. I think we've beat that one to death too.
Well, let me sock it all the way back though,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
so how does this, practically speaking, because we always like to do more than just ramble and rant. So we kind of started this talking about anxiety and depression, and especially the problems when it comes to younger people and the compounding problem of the egoism, narcissism that goes along with that. So how do you do that mentally when it comes to something like, anxiety or depression of, all right, intellectually, I know I don't have anything to be depressed about. Intellectually, I know I don't need to be anxious going into this situation because everyone's not going to be looking at and judging me. But you still need something, you can check off there. What is the make your bed of that? Can we come up with a, make your bed kind of tangible solution for anxiety and depression of, all right, well, here's a baby step you can do. Here's a thing you can do to check off and say, okay, I've done a thing. I can do this.
Okay, so I know I'm going to have to speak in front of classes in the near future. And I kind of restarted the social anxiety process because I've been hanging out in my garage for since 2018 with just the set number of people that I've been working with. And I know that's a problem for me too. So what I started doing this class, and we'll see if it works. In fact, this might be my behavior analysis for the first one I have to do, because we have to adjust behavior, and it could be yourself, and we have to have an intervention. And I thought of this before I even started this class. I'm going to at least try to answer 4 or 5 questions that the teacher asks during the class, even if I'm just kind of not sure of the answer. I'm just going to force 4 or 5 during the class. And those moments that I'm like, okay, this is the one I'm going to answer. This is the one I'm going to answer. Let them happen. And take note that even when you were wrong, she didn't judge you. She just said, well, you're on the right track, but this is more what I was going for. Or you take the criticism even when you're wrong, and notice that nobody else cares.
Mm.
But also notice that the nods, because somebody else in the class might have been on the same train of thought, they just didn't speak up. And it's definitely made a leap from week 1 to 2. So we'll see if that continues forward to ultimately when I'm having to address everybody in the class. I've already talked in front of them on small occasions multiple times.
Mm.
That's a good step. But little things like put yourself in a small social situation, like your son probably a church group or something, or make an announcement in front of the swim team if they were still on it, or little social situations to kind of get those under your belt. And then again, just the notice people were receptive to what I said. That's a win. They weren't that receptive, but they also really didn't care, and it died after that moment.
Mm.
Maybe it's not a win, but it's not the fear you had.
Exactly.
You didn't catch the snake and grab it behind the head, but you also didn't get bit. So
That, you know what, that's a good point is, whether you use one of these kinds of ideas or come up with your own, remember not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good,
mhm.
because that is a big problem I've had in trying to in the past trying to deal with these kinds of things on my own, is that I'll come up uh with something that's really unattainable. And sometimes I'll even tell myself, this isn't necessarily the goal, this is just the ideal, but it won't matter because if I don't achieve it, I'm still pissed at myself.
Well, and also understand that you're probably always going to feel some of the autonomic response.
Mm,
It's bringing it
yeah.
to a manageable level. The person attacked by the dog. Well, how many dogs do you need to be exposed to where you're just not afraid of dogs? Well, that depends on the severity of the attack, first of all. But after a certain point, you can be around dogs, but also understand that you might elevate your heart rate a little bit every time you are.
Point.
But you also can cognitively say, I'm not in danger.
That's a good point.
It's
All right,
it's it's
speaking
it's the bell and the salivating with Pavlov. The
speaking
dogs
of
will always salivate, but it
yes,
will eventually subside to a some degree when they realize they're not getting food every time a bell's ring.
speaking of dogs, this idiot wants to go outside. So let's pause for a second before we move on to the next topic.
All right. Well, we're back. We were just talking about social anxiety. And one of the things that kind of popped in my head while we were on a short little break was actually why I have some of the books up behind me. It's because one of the things we have to deal with, and we were talking about kids, is this is a Western thing.
Hmm.
You don't hear about anxiety and depression and all, except for rare instances in tribal hunter gatherer type societies because they ain't got time for that. But also, we live in large cities with lots of people. So when we get in a social situation like that, a lot of times we have a discomfort with our audience as much as we have with our own ability. Whereas if you live in a tribe of 150, there's not a whole lot of variant there. You know where you stand with these people. So whatever your role is, you're going to be confident in that role. I mean, and as a child, you either develop that or you don't make it. So by the time you're an adult, you have to have developed this skill. Whereas everything's so abstract for our children. You said, well, how do you develop that? And I gave you an example of what I'm doing, but you're some kid in high school that doesn't have many friends and is called upon in class to read the chapter out of the book, which was always the thing that made me anxious when I was, especially since I'm actually a slow reader. So reading out loud was really difficult for me because you have to read at the pace you talk. And then you get made fun of because you didn't perform well. And then you start this spiral going downhill. And we have to abstract everything. How do we build confidence in a young kid without, you know, being as abusive as we would have to be to imitate the wild, right?
Mm.
That's the conundrum we have. How do we not be abusive, but also give our children something challenging enough to develop? That's a fine line. That's something I'm still trying to figure out when my son's already 13. And I think, well, of course, we err on the side of caution. So I probably
Yeah.
was on the side of being too soft on him. But again, I know how I develop toughness, and that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
And but again, this is a Western thing. We have to figure out how to do it abstractly. And realistically, this is, I don't like year-round sports. We've already had our rants on that. But this is where sports in general can come in. Like you talked about with your son making the swim team. My son's done a lot better since he's been on the swim team. This is where AP classes come in if academics is your thing. And realistically, finding good mentors for your kids as well. Patrick Bet David was talking about sports the other day, and they were talking about that jackass coach. Well, if you have a good home life, sometimes you need that jackass coach. And
Are we talking about the guy who got in trouble because it looks like he punches a kid in the
no, they
stomach
were just
during?
talking in general. They were
Oh, just in
they were
general.
doing generals. He did tell a funny story because you were talking about the time your son didn't make the team was one of your moments. His dad apparently has one trophy from school that he kept, and it was the time they lost by 101 points in a basketball game and they got a participation trophy. So he kept that trophy to constantly remind Patrick of the time he failed so bad.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't.
Nice.
Who knows? Who knows how? I mean, he's obviously a very successful person, so it hit the nerve correctly. But our kids are so soft. If you hit the nerve just wrong, you can spiral them the wrong way. But yeah, I think this is where something like Boy Scouts might come in handy
Mm.
because you can get them out in nature, and when you get out in nature, you realize nature doesn't give a fuck.
Oh yeah.
He's going to be out helping me work this weekend because that's why I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be dragging brush around at my mom's house. He's going to be out dragging brush with me.
That's copperhead season.
Well, it's also super dry and hot, so they're hiding.
Well, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come out later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't go outside at night. When you hear the cicadas, that's when the copperheads are eating because they eat those. So
Yeah, it's too hot for the snakes even in Texas right now.
yep. And I'll teach him what to look for as far as don't pick this up without looking under it and stuff. But yeah, that's part of it though.
Mm-hmm.
You learn how to do this and you learn how to do it correctly, or you could get bit by a potentially deadly snake. Nature doesn't care.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yep. All right. Now let's talk about something fun. Do we have
Sports.
fun
Well,
things to talk about?
I segued to it with sports football. It's football season. We got to make our predictions. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of followed the preseason, but I didn't get to follow it as much as I would like because of all the school stuff.
Yeah.
I did bring up my sports track financial stuff to take a look, and I don't know
Yeah.
what the Texans did in the final days of the preseason to have bumped their dead cap up so much, but that's disconcerting to me. Let's see.
Did they drop some people that were under contract?
They dropped a lot of people, but every team did.
Yeah.
So it's like, who did you drop? Every team had to, because this is the difference between the last 2 years and every time before that. Every time before that, you had preseason game 1, you narrow it down a little bit as far as your roster. Preseason game 2, you narrow it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
3, then you get down a little bit more. 4, then you go to 53-man roster. They had 1, 2, 3 with no limits, and then you narrow it down to the 53-man roster. And that drop list was massive.
I don't know why they didn't up the roster space a little bit when they added a game. To me, that seems like it would have made sense. But that's a rant for another time, I suppose.
I mean, there's still only 18th with dead cap space, but let's see. Okay.
Well,
we already knew about Brandon Cook's hit when they traded him to Dallas.
yeah.
But I'm not seeing any Maben, outside linebacker, $2 million hit. Oh, that was a bad but he was good enough to make the team. Desmond King. I'm surprised he didn't make the team. Kirksey. That's
Unless
one
they're
that's
unless they're
unfortunate.
thinking unless they're thinking, look, we're rebuilding anyway. No one expects anything out of us. Let's drop these. Yeah, we have some veterans, but we'd rather see what these younger people can do if that's their line of thinking.
Well, one
Um,
one thing I did like is some of the rookies that they're real high on, they signed to pretty damn good rookie contracts,
mhm.
which is going to prevent the year three holdout kind of stuff. So that yeah,
Yeah.
they may not pan out, but at least you don't get that person that's not playing because they're unhappy with their contract.
And that was one of the things that has killed Dallas in these last few years was that Zeke holdout
Mm-hmm.
and then not saying,
Zeke
okay,
went where? He went to the Patriots.
he's with the Patriots now, yeah.
So let me
But
look at Dallas first, and then we'll check how Zeke is hitting the Patriots.
but look, as much as I can sympathize with running backs and the idea that, oh man, we're now expendable and we don't get any money. Um, well, yeah, you're expendable and you don't get any money because the position isn't even remotely as important as it used to be. Um, so that it wasn't just that they paid a running back when nobody else is paying running backs practically, but
Mm-hmm.
it's how much they paid him and how they structured that contract. Um,
Well, okay, so let's stick with that for a second because that's an important topic with the NFL right now because you're seeing all the reels and TikToks and memes coming out about running backs being treated as expendable. This is actually just bringing it back to normal. Because when you talk about Zeke getting his contract right before that, what do we see? Le'Veon Bell. We saw
mhm,
all of these, a slew of running backs holding out for the massive contract. Todd Gurley was another one of them.
yeah.
All of these running backs holding out for the massive contract. But look over the last few years of Super Bowl championships. Name the starting running back for Kansas City last year. Can you?
No.
Jerick McKinnon, but that's just because he was on my fantasy team. Name the starting running back for Philadelphia last year.
The last running back I can remember for the Chiefs was Priest Holmes. How long ago was that?
Stones, that was like 15 years ago, 10 years ago at least. At least.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Let's see. Dead cap. How much did Zeke hurt him? Oh, that's right. If they dropped him after a certain date, it dropped it in half. So he's only got 5.5 million in dead cap
yeah.
for you guys, which is still a lot, but it's not as bad as the 12 million or whatever it was supposed to be.
Look, and
Lyle Collins, who was he?
he was one of their big time Pro Bowl All Pro linemen.
He's $8 million in dead cap for him.
Yeah,
Did
I
they
can't
just
remember where
drop him
he's
or
at
did they
now.
trade him?
I think they traded him. I think he's with the Bengals now.
This is what I hate about dead cap is why are you responsible after a trade is the question. Why doesn't the other team assume all the cap responsibility
Hmm.
is what I want to know. Oh, never mind. Someone answered this for me. I think it's the guaranteed money.
Ah,
I
okay.
think it's the guaranteed money.
You're responsible for the guaranteed money because you guaranteed it, and
Yeah.
they're responsible for the remaining salary.
Mm-hmm.
That would
Uh,
make sense.
Dak is still killing y'all at 26 million cap hit this year and 89 total. So do you drop him? You're responsible for 89.
Um,
It's-
and so what did you say for Zeke? It was only like 5.5 million dead cap,
yeah.
but um, that matters when you've got. I don't know. I can't remember if he finally resigned, but Zach Martin was holding out for a contract extension. He wasn't in camp, and I don't know if they finally got that figured out. But your line used to be the foundation of that offense, and it is now suspect. And you can't get, and you were having trouble getting this guy re-signed. Well, gee, maybe if you had that 5.5 million that you weren't taking as dead cap, you could have got him an extension that would have made him happy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those dead cap numbers matter big time when you're trying to put together
I just realized I haven't
a
been
winning
sharing the
team.
screen that I've been going through. Hold on.
Um,
So
and it,
so we wanted to look where Zeke went while you're talking there. Patriots, you said?
yeah.
So I'll look that up while you're going.
Um, What is this league average of what? Cap hit, dead cap,
This
or
is cap available right now.
cap space? Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. Um,
Which after final cuts, this is my thing. I'm looking at dead cap, but also cap space available. If you're not spending all your money, that's basically
hmm,
money not being spent, right? That's money not on the roster.
yeah.
Uh,
Um, I don't know how much this goes into it with NFL as much as it does in NBA and MLB, that you'll see that in MLB and NBA because they're saving
okay,
up for big time free agents the
this is
following year.
this is the thing here. Why the hell did Zeke not just restructure his contract? He he's only getting paid 2-3 million this year with the Patriots. Why
I
did
th
he why did he restructure
well,
there?
the rumor mill is that he wanted to stay with the Cowboys and he was willing to restructure. Uh,
But
but
they wouldn't even keep him restructured.
but the scuttlebutt is his performance and productivity had dropped off so much the last couple of years that it just wasn't worth it to them at any price. That they would rather have the roster spot than him even at a restructured deal.
Okay, so let's look at the Cleveland Browns, and I hope my little formula works because we've got not they're the leading team in not spending all the money they have available. They're right in the middle of the pack of dead cap space. So add that to the money they're not spending. And the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players are responsible for 5, 10, 16, 22, 30, 40% of the salary.
That's a
if
lot.
if my little assessment on money spent on the money ball part of it is correct, they're going to be last in the league. And as a Texans fan, that's exciting because we have their pick next year. So we could end up with the number one
Yeah.
pick, even though we don't even have our pick next year. So just looking at those factors from what we've talked about before, then predicted at least in the bottom 5, I would say. So there's my first bold prediction. Cleveland Browns are potentially last in the league, but definitely bottom 5. Now, the other one that looks like they're trying to tank is Arizona. And oh my gosh, not the highest dead
Holy
cap, but
crap.
really high. And they're not spending all their money. So what would that be together? 68 versus Cleveland would be 57 in money not spent. So Arizona might be number one pick next year, which so many pundits out there are saying that's what they're trying to do. I mean, they just put Kyler Murray on the pup list, so he's not even going to play for the first 4 games. And
I
that's
hadn't heard that.
yeah, that's like $10 million of their cap space. Uh,
Um, well, another interesting team that I see there, number 11, the New York Jets, because of Rodgers.
yep, and he restructured too. So Bay front office is going, what the hell? Because Rogers cap hit is only 8 million, where it was like 20 million
And they
for
were they
Green
were one of
Bay,
the surprises last year, and it was all because of their defense.
which their highest paid player is at inside linebacker, which you don't see that much anymore.
Oh yeah.
Dwan
Um,
Brown, he's to play for us. We drafted him.
I didn't know they had Dalvin Cook now.
Yeah, he just signed like the other day. Yeah, and he restructured too because he wasn't going to cost Minnesota that much. See, that's the thing. All these players that are acting unhappy about salary are going to these other teams and then restructuring and getting paid less. It's making no sense to me.
Well, it's because they're
Are they
saying salary and they may mean it, but it's not just salary. It's well, I mean it's like a normal thing of okay, so uh my wife had an old boss reach out to her about jumping ship to join her, who she now works for Amazon. Well, that would have required either relocating to their offices in California or DC. And and so, okay, well, yeah, the more money's worth it, but I don't want to live there. So it's not
Hmm.
just the salary. It's that I have been annoyed with you people for a long time, and this is a convenient. So you need to make it worth my while for me to stick around because I'm not happy here.
Well, and let's look at
Uh,
their dead versus what they're not spending, 24 million. So that's pretty low. And they're predicted to be really good. So yeah,
the
I
interesting
think
thing,
they win the East. I think they win AFC
yeah,
East.
and that's the interesting thing to me is that they're literally right next to the Dolphins, who
Pretty much the same.
are the other are one of the other teams there in contention with the East. It's strange to say that that division is no longer the Patriots to be had, but I mean, how do you feel about the Bills? Because they're still in that division, and I would
Oh,
think they would be the presumptive winners of that division.
let me pause for a second. I just got a text from my 7 a.m. tomorrow saying be there in 5.
Buffalo Bills.
All right. Yeah,
All right.
Buffalo Bills. I had their numbers up here a second ago.
So I have to think they're still the presumptive winner of that division.
Well, going by
Um,
Moneyball, almost no dead cap. It's 7 million and spent pretty much every bit of what they can spend at 1.1 million. So let's see where that money is being spent. I'm going to assume Allen's going to be the top. Yeah, Josh Allen's the top at about 20. So the top five, one, two, three, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 make up 15, 22, 27. Oh, excuse me, 28, 29, and 34 million or 34%. So less than the Browns, but still pretty high.
mhm.
34% in the top five. But they got a six that they've got a lot of $5+ million players. So what that's going to scream to me is if they stay healthy, they'll win it. But they're going to have a very huge lack of depth at that point because
Well, that was a lot of their problem last year is
mm-hmm.
that oh, I'm brain farting on his name. The Aggie linebacker that was at Denver and he went to the Bills and they really missed him when he got hurt. And that
Middle
was a big,
linebacker.
yeah, exactly.
He's MVP of the Super Bowl when the Broncos won.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he was a
Miller,
role
Von
player.
Miller.
Yeah, he was a role player that year though. He was signed on a role player contract.
He was a role player. He was like their third down linebacker.
Yeah, I'm not
And
seeing him on
yet
here.
when he went out, they really missed his production.
Mm-hmm.
Um was Von Miller and that
Oh,
to
here we
me was
go.
an indication of,
He's on the pup right now.
yeah, of why was that one little piece so integral and you couldn't fix it. You couldn't, you know, plug that gap. Um and I think that is a big deal when we talk something that is has come into the lexicon of sports analysis, the past years is the window.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talk about uh uh athletes at the pinnacle of their performance, and then you also factor into that these contracts. That's why we're sitting here harping and ranting about dead dead cap space and unspent money and all these other things is because you have a finite window. Jackpot, we we finally have our quarterback. We finally have our whatever. All right, but have you been able to put the pieces around that individual or that core of individuals in order to be able to take your shot at a championship? And so, for instance, as much as I liked Romo when he was the quarterback, there was a major problem there with the Cowboys of you have got this finite window and you've got a quarterback that is injury prone.
Yeah. Well,
That's a
the same
problem.
thing with Dak right now.
Mhm.
They've got a finite window. They've got a massive contract on him, and what 2 years out of the three he's been on that contract, he spent half of it out.
Mhm.
We had the same problem here in Houston with JJ Watt. We just
Mhm.
signed him to that $100 million contract, which was stupid, which everybody hates me in Houston for saying that. And he spent the next 3 years with partial seasons because of a major injury each one of those years. And it's like, yeah, you can jump on a fridge. Cool story, bro. But can you stay on the field?
And with Dak's contract, it's going to get worse because you just had the Cowboys up there, and his cap hit wasn't that bad this year.
Well, it
It's
wasn't
gonna
that
get
bad. It was still 20
yeah,
plus
yeah.
million.
It's gonna get even worse the next
Mhm.
few years. They have put themselves in a position where like every 2 years they're going to have to restructure his deal, or they will have a team that is nothing but him. You can't do that. You can't do that and be competitive.
So this makes for the interesting Moneyball matchup though that the two teams we just talked about, Buffalo and the Jets, because the Jets are a little worse ratio of what they can spend and what they can't spend. Bills look like, just looking at these numbers, are going to be the best across the board if I look, because I mean
Mhm.
only 7 million in dead and almost everything they could spend otherwise, but they have it front loaded where the Jets had it spread out.
Yeah.
And so a lot of good players versus several great players is going to be, and again, it's a long season. We might see the Bills jump out to a lead in the beginning, and then the Jets kind of keep on chugging along. Uh, let's see, any sleepers you wanted to look at? Here,
No. So my
well,
so if we
well,
want to
here's
talk
here's
analysis
one.
here.
Here's one that's a fun example. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look at them at the bottom here.
Yeah.
They've spent more than they can spend, so they're going to have a hit next year because of that. Uh, I think you lose supplemental draft picks too, but
Hmm.
don't quote me on that. And look at their dead cap at 76 million, which is the highest of every team. So they basically bought their last Super Bowl,
Hmm.
and they're still paying for it. So this is what happens when you have a salary cap, when you try to buy a championship.
Well, I think they compounded that by thinking, oh, dude, we bought a championship. We can repeat. We can, and
Mm-hmm.
there hasn't been a repeat in a while because of the salary cap and the parity and all that. It's really hard to repeat in the NFL these days. But they thought they could, and they just compounded their problems. So my thinking here, I want to look at it in two from two different points of view. I think with your idea of money balling it, I think you scroll down to the bottom there, and you would have to think, all right, the the kind of presumptive favorites for the Super Bowl should be Philly versus Buffalo. As far as,
No, because this order is cap space. Look at Philadelphia's dead cap.
oh, I didn't see that. I was looking at I
Yeah.
thought you had it sorted by dead cap, so I was looking at the grade out there.
Now let me sort it by dead cap. Hold on. Okay. So Tampa Bay's at the top. Like I said, look at the
Mhm.
Rams. They bought a championship too.
There, and that was how many years ago? Five now? 4?
4 or 5. But they
Yeah,
also
so
they also went back too. So they won one and then they went back to one.
that's true.
Uh Green
That
Bay, their front office is a mess. But
yeah,
look at Philly. Yeah, they've they
that
pretty
makes
much.
me feel a lot better about the Cowgirls in the NFC East, that they have that much, that Philly has that much dead cap. Um,
Yeah, that's why even Smallwood, that was their starting running back last year during the Super Bowl, but they even had to let him go, which is, a middle of the road pay running back. They had to let him go, and they probably have a rookie in his place at this point, or some journeyman that just needed a job.
all right, so scroll down to the bottom here, and let's see if we
So
buy into. Okay, so you've got.
Cincinnati, and they've spent they don't have a lot of available money, so the I think they're the favorite for the NFC North, although Baltimore showing by here is right there with them.
Mhm.
So Baltimore, so that's an interesting matchup. Cincinnati and Baltimore,
How does
Kansas
KC
City.
have that much money left to spend?
Because they're role players like wide receivers, they're not
Mm.
spending any money on.
Oh, they're all under rookie contracts, aren't they?
I think so. And like I said, I named McKinnon as their starting running back. Again, middle of the road pay. Pacheco was a rookie last year. He was their second running back. They're they spent money on Mahomes, but then they spread it out after that. Hopefully they got a line. If they got a line for him, they're going to be fine.
You know
That's
what's interesting to me there? That's
I'm
all AFC
surprised.
down at the bottom.
I'm surprised Kelsey's the third highest paid on that team.
I'm
Uh,
not that surprised.
Now Justin Reed. Oh, I'm saying I thought he would be second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Justin Reed. He made his money last year because remember when their kicker went out, and then the
Mm.
backup kicker went out, and he ended up kicking for him and playing safety.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, Valdez Scantling. So they got one wide receiver getting paid money. Other than that, look at a role player on the offense. You got one wide receiver, one tight end making money. Our next offensive player on the board is at 1.9 million, and that's Tony.
I think he was a rookie last year, wasn't he?
No, they got him from some other team.
Okay.
This was a big
Mixing him up with
stink
someone
with
else.
whoever they got him from. And then we don't get another wide receiver till way down there again. So yeah, they're trusting Mahomes to be able to just spread the ball around.
Hmm.
And Kelsey, the Mahomes Kelsey show. Which, by the way, if you're in our fantasy football league and you want Kelsey, you got to pick him before the fourth pick because I'm just picking him. The top three picks are no brainers
Hmm.
because it's the two best receivers in McCaffrey. And then after that, the playing field, those are like 15 to 20 point a game average guys. And then after that, it drops to 10 to 15 point average guys. And if I'm going to get a 10 to 15 point average guy, it's going to be at the one position that's the hardest to fill. And that's tight end because I can get another 10 to 15 point average running back or wide receiver the next round.
Hmm. The drop off between the top producers and the next group is it's always been huge with tight end, but it's even worse now because you used to have like three or four guys up there with Gronk, Kelsey, uh who was
Andrews.
who was the guy that Philly had when they won their, and I think he's with San Francisco now. I'm brain
Oh,
farting on his name.
starts with an A, right? Akers? No. I know
No,
who
no,
you're
no.
talking about.
So you had him, and then Dallas had a couple of good tight ends for a while there.
Well, since Witten, though, they haven't had that high
Yeah.
scoring of a tight end. And then before that, it was Tony Gonzalez and the
Hmm.
guy from San Diego, Antonio Gates.
Yeah. So you had 3 to 5, and then a huge drop off after that. Well, now it's really just Kelsey, and then a huge drop off.
Because teams just aren't utilizing them. And Kelsey's not really a tight end. He's just classified as one. He's like the old Shannon Sharp days. Yeah, he's kind of a tight end, but he's in the slot most of the time. You know who I saw is still playing the other day? Jimmy Graham.
Yeah.
He caught a touchdown the other day in the preseason game. I'm like, Jimmy Graham? He's still alive?
Yep. Go back up and resort by dead cap because it
Oh, it's
reads
at
it
its
to
back.
cap space. All right. So the interesting thing that jumped out at me is you have to go up to 2019, 2021 NFC teams. All the rest of those are AFC teams, which I find interesting. Which the kind of consensus for the past few years is that the AFC has more good teams than the NFC. And so I don't know. I don't think it's an accident that, the top 10 teams there are all AFC. Now, still looking at it from this point of view is I still like the Bills because they're good on their money and they have more proven assets than the other teams that I'm looking at down
Well,
here.
and also they've had more coaching cohesion. That's the
Mhm.
part with the Jets that throws it off too. Yeah, Aaron
Yes.
Rodgers is there. Yeah, he's got a couple receivers. They got a good running back in Dalvin Cook, even though he has lost a step. Defense is really good, but we've got a second year coach versus Buffalo. I mean, they've been contenders for like 4 years in a row. So yeah, Buffalo, you talked about injury to the linebacker. What actually I think was the turning point was when your quarterback, Josh Allen, for your fantasy football team, dislocated his elbow in that game,
Mhm.
but then kept playing. You saw the
Mhm.
drop in production,
Oh yeah, big time.
and when they became a purely defensive team, then Von Miller became more important.
That's a good point.
But at some point, when you can't stay on the field for more than 3 plays at a time, your defense wears down. Look at Houston last year. For those that pay attention to us, our little meager team, our defense was actually good last year for the first 3 quarters, but they were also on the field for 75% of the time, the game up
Yeah.
until that point.
Yeah.
And then we started wearing down, and these rookies that weren't used to playing a full game would start wearing down, or a full season, excuse me, a full NFL season would start wearing down. And we lost so many games by 6 points or less, and realistically by 5 minutes or less of game time.
Yeah. All right. So on a similar Homer note here, looking at the bottom of this list here, I'm going to give two predictions. My gut and then what the numbers are saying to me. And what the numbers are saying to me here is as far as uh money spent and dead cap money that you can't spend for the plus, as I've said, I don't know that I trust the Chargers and the Bengals. I know there are pundits out there that are picking that like those two teams. I don't know that I trust them, and I don't know that you can just be the Mahomes and Kelsey show forever. I trust the Bills more. So I'm going to say what I said last year that was a frustrating disappointment, which was uh, uh, the repeat of the Dallas Buffalo Super Bowl. That's to me trying to put aside uh the emotional connection to the sports and just thinking about who do I trust with these numbers. I would say Dallas, because defense wins championships, and they do have a very narrow window here where they've managed to finagle the money enough that they might be able to put together a total team here. My gut says that they won't get it done, either of those teams.
Well, see, here's my thing with Dallas, because it's the third variable, how much you spend on certain players.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, Dak ain't it right now. Dak is throwing more interceptions than anybody else in football except Justin
Mhm.
Fields.
Mhm.
And that much money put into an interception machine is to me the variable that says Philly still holds on. Washington takes a step forward. New York and Dallas play for that middle of the road. Washington still last, but they take a step forward. Dallas and New York still fight back and forth for that second or third spot, which could be a wild card spot with the NFC East the way it is.
Mhm.
But then I think Philly still wins the East, but then doesn't go far in the playoffs because of the lack of depth right now.
Mhm.
All it's going to take is 1 or 2 injuries for Philadelphia to really feel the way they kind of bought their way to the top last time.
I'm not sure who I trust in the NFC. My gut, though, as much as I don't like it, because I don't like him, as much as I don't like Pete Carroll, he's a good coach. As much as I don't like Seattle, they've had a pretty good front office the past decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
So my gut prediction is going to be Seattle and Cincy.
I I can see Seattle. Definitely can see Seattle. I think a surprise team might be New Orleans.
Mm.
It really depends on their receiving core. They need to take a step forward. Uh, but they have a really good defense. They play only one top 10 quarterback all year. Of course, that's top 10 from last year. Some of the ones that are out of the top 10 are rookies,
Wait,
which could end up being top
Hill is
10s.
listed as a tight end.
He's always been listed as a tight end.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's a tight end that comes in and plays quarterback every once in a while.
Okay.
Uh, they have Michael Thomas on the roster right here. We'll see if he plays. If he plays and he plays like he kind of used to, then we should be fine. Look how little they're spending on Derek Carr.
Yeah.
That's huge. We'll see the top 5 players: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 9, 10, 4, 9, 15, 14, 20, only 28% on the top 5
I
players.
I automatically feel good about your front office decision making when I look at the cap percentage and I don't see anyone in double digits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And actually, quite a bit of the team above 1%, which is $3 million.
Mhm.
So of $1 million players, they've spread it out. So it's a
Mhm.
complete team.
I do think that's a good pick for a dark horse because I don't think anyone is picking. I imagine there are people who are picking New Orleans to do a lot better than they did last year, but that's not saying much.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, who's in their division? It's Tampa Bay.
Tampa, New Orleans, Atlanta. Crap. Who's the other
Is
NFC
it
South team? Carolina.
Carolina? Oh, yeah, they're going to win the division for sure. Atlanta will be middle of the road. Carolina, watching them in the preseason, yeah, Bryce Young looks like he's got promise down the road, but the team as a whole is trash. They have zero depth. Their starting lineup was mediocre at best, and that's against some other team's second team. It, yeah, we'll call them a rebuilding team.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's if Bryce Young at way smaller than me can take the hits because he's what 5'10", 180 pounds, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with the current NFL rules, I mean, look what happened to Tua. I mean, at some point you take a hit despite the rules, and then you're in
Well,
trouble.
remember the old targeting days, the target gate or whatever they called it days.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've given my picks and I've given my this is what I think the numbers say and this is what my gut says. What are you thinking going into the season here?
I think NFC side. I think NFC is the hardest one because my dark horse is New Orleans. San Francisco is still a solid team. Uh, but here's the question: we've got their former defensive coordinator, and he took their assistant offensive coordinator with him. So how much does that drop the production of their team? Is the question. Uh, who else is Seattle's in their division, right?
Yeah.
And I like it's going to be a slugfest between Seattle and San Fran. I think they get a division winner and a wild card spot in that one between the two of them. Uh, Philly's going to win the North. New Orleans is going to win the South. And who's
East. Philly's the East. The North is going to be
Minnesota,
I
Chicago, uh,
I would say
Detroit,
Minnesota
and
by default, but they've had a window or windows for a while and they can't ever seem to do anything with it even when they have good players and good teams. I I honestly would not be that surprised if the Lions somehow managed to win that division this year.
Lions. Let me look at what their
I
money
don't know that they're going to do anything with that,
20,
but
36. Okay, so
with
Moneyball, they're looking good.
with how they overperformed last year and play even a lot of the games they lost, they were close games. So,
Ooh, they're paying Jared Goff 14% of their salary though.
mhm, mhm.
Oof, that hurts. Who they got someone else at QB. What was a rookie?
I believe so. I can't remember
Yeah,
who
they
they.
they're the ones that picked up Hooker. He might have promise, even though he's like a Whedon. He was a little older. Uh he definitely could take Goff's spot though, but then you have money you're not using.
Uh-huh.
And then the Packers. Packers definitely aren't going to win that division. Yeah, I think Minnesota by default. Lions are gonna come in hot. Chicago's gonna take a step up from where they were last
But they're
year,
still gonna be Chicago.
but they're still gonna be Chicago. They're a rebuild too. I hate to, you know, talk bad about Fields because he's really trying to take the next
Hmm.
step, but
Hmm.
he's still one dimensional. And I hope he takes the next step. He seems like a nice guy.
Hmm.
Uh yeah, so Minnesota. So those are my division winners. I think it's a slugfest between, you know what? I'm going to take the risk pick. I'm going to say New Orleans in the Super Bowl.
Really?
Yeah.
That'd
I
be
I think
huge.
I think if okay, so the caveat on that is if Michael Thomas plays at a high level.
Mm.
He hasn't played in so many years because of his injuries. The meme that came out this last year was when Damar Hamlin was practicing with the Bills again. It said this guy died on the field and he still came back faster than Michael Thomas.
Oh man.
so if we got a legit number one receiver out there and then some role players around Derek Carr, great offensive line, great defense, I think they can do it. uh AFC, Bills, Jets, there's your slugfest there.
Mm.
Baltimore and Cincinnati are gonna I think they split games when they
Mm.
play. uh but I think Cincinnati's still the favorite to win that one. uh
That's my biggest hesitation with, I know I said since he was my gut pick, but my biggest hesitation with him is that division is always nasty.
Yeah, except Cleveland's in it. So there's that. Let me look at Baltimore. I need to see their receiving core. Here's the reason I think Cincy beats Baltimore is because Baltimore just put all of that money. Yeah, they've got 20% of their cap in two players, a left tackle and Lamar Jackson.
Mhm.
And then
Which
another
is weird because you need a left tackle to protect your quarterback's blind side when he drops back to pass and your quarterback can't pass. That's mean, but it's true.
yeah, 40% of their cap is in four players. So yeah, Mark Andrews is good and Lamar can run, but I still don't see a receiver to. Oh, they got Beckham Jr. Oh,
I'm sure it'll be fun.
let's see if he pans out. If he plays like 5 years ago, Beckham Jr., this is the surprise team of the league.
Well, but the problem with that is Beckham Jr. was a great receiver because he had good speed and was a downfield threat. Lamar Jackson needs short and medium range receivers.
Well, and they also have Bateman, who was already a downfield threat. So it's basically downfield threats and their tight end Andrews, who's a great tight end. But if you're covering the short, you've only got to cover one guy, have a heavy pass rush that keeps him from being able to hit the 40, 50 yard threat. No, but that's saying again, Beckham hasn't played since he tore his ACL.
Yeah.
What, 3 years ago, 2 years ago? It was the last time the Rams were in the Super Bowl because he was playing for the Rams.
Uh, yeah. Yeah, I think that was 3 years ago.
Yeah. So if he comes out guns blazing and he pans out to be the money receiver that he thinks he is, that's the surprise team, but I'm not confident in that, so I'm still taking the Bengals. For the win, though, dang it, just like the last several years, it's between the Bills and the Chiefs. And playing Moneyball, I'll say Bills. I predicted them last year, and they were out in the first. But Bills, New Orleans, Bills, Saints.
That would be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. Houston Texans, I think they fight for the win, the division championship. I think they come up a little short, but I think it's closer than people think.
You
They
think they'll make a
definitely.
wild card?
I don't think our division has what it takes to make a wild card.
Because there's too many other teams in the AFC.
Yeah, AFC East. I mean, you already have potential wild card teams in the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins. the North, you've got Baltimore and Cincinnati. Pittsburgh's been mediocre for a while, but they're always a threat.
But they're still Pittsburgh, so yeah.
Yeah. And then got KC and Denver. If Sean Payton can quarterback whisper
That's true.
Russell Wilson, they're
That's
back
true.
in the mix.
And then the Chargers, who looked good last year, and a lot of people think will be even better. So the FC is pretty stacked.
Yeah, I think in the South you have to win the division this year. I mean, records are kind of funky because you can like win all of your division but still lose your division, but you have a lot of wins stacked up. That can always happen. But I think there's too many good teams that we just named.
All right. Well, we'll see. Buffalo, New Orleans, or Cincy, Seattle. The odds are it will be none of those teams with the way we pick. So don't bet on any of those four. All right. Well, that's all I got. We've been rambling for an hour and a half ish. So I should probably get back to being productive. And
And I think we're not leaving for Lavernia till Saturday morning, so we can do our normal Friday
all right.
afternoon.
So we'll see y'all Friday for
Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time talk, which I need to prep a little more because I want to be able to get through a big chunk this time so that we can
And
get
in
through
less than
that.
3 hours this time.
And in less than 3 hours, because there's a chapter or two of kind of randomness, and then we finally get back to Matt, which should be fun.
Which is funny because I did listen to while I was mowing the lawn and stuff the other day. What we did, because I was like, man, we went a long time. We really didn't there was just that much substance in
A lot going
in
on
those
there.
two
Yeah.
chapters. Yeah.
It's why this is to me one of the top 3 or top 5 books in the series. Is there's a lot going on and it's good stuff.
All right. Well, no medical advice. We gave some examples of, how I deal with a little bit of social anxiety, and Heath gave some experiences, but you go see a professional if you think you need professional help.
Yeah.
Nothing we
That's
said
the big
supersedes that.
takeaway
Yeah.
is don't try and do it on your own.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you next time.